Hi, 109 class, modern art class. We're talking this week about Cubism and some of the different artists that Cubism ended up influencing in the decades afterwards. And one of my favorite artists, Natalia Goncharova, who works in this style, is somebody who I've been having trouble finding online sources on. There's lots of books about her, but there isn't anything really good for me to provide for you for free online, so I decided to instead make a little video. So in this video, I'll tell you a bit about Natalia Goncharova's background, and then we'll focus in on linen, which is the artwork that's on your study guide. So here's Goncharova. This is a self-portrait. You can see she was born in 1889, lived till 1962. She was born in Russia, and most of her career was in Russia. Just based on what we've been studying so far in this class, if you look at this artwork, you can see the Impressionist influence, of course. You know, those really loose brushstrokes, the interest in showing all the color that's in the light and shadow. And then it also has kind of a fauvist feeling. You know, the way these colors are used feel more about creating a mood than they do about describing things. Here's another early work of hers, just to give you a little context. Goncharova was born to an upper-class family, but she was always really interested in the plight of workers, and she made a lot of artworks that were about working rural people. So this is a group of people, you know, obviously planting potatoes. The style of this might look to you kind of like Gauguin, who we studied back during our post-impressionist unit. I think she was influenced by those artists. I mean, really everybody was influenced by that group of post-impressionists, but Gauguin seems to be a really clear precedent here for the way that she's using color and the way that she lets these heavy outlines sit. Her mature style, though, the thing that she's known for, looks more like this. I'm a big fan of this one called Cyclists from 1913. Now remember, Cubism was probably, 1907 and 8, it was getting started. So this is a couple years into Cubism. Something that Goncharova does a lot, you'll see it in all of her works that we'll study in terms of Cubist influence, is that she integrates letters. The forms of the letters end up working like abstract shapes in the same way that, for example, you know, the motion lines of this wheel end up working, or this odd little building that's in the background. She also integrates elements of signage that would have been part of just everyday life in a big city. So for example, this coffee cup, the pointing finger, those are things that would have been like a sign out in public. And then she's using that as a way to push the background up to the foreground like we so often see Cubists doing. The one that I wanted to focus on is this one called Linen from 1912. So that's actually the year before this guy. This one's really interesting to me. As I mentioned earlier, she's somebody who likes to focus on work. And this is a painting that's about laundry. Now, of course, laundry is a really normal part of everyone's life. Back then, it would have been specifically a normal part of women's lives, since women would be doing the majority of the housework. But even though that's the case, you almost never see images of domestic work like laundry and cleaning and things like that in artwork. So this is a really interesting exception. I know it's not so obvious when you first look at it, so I'm going to point out a couple of things. So this is an iron. You know, like the old just metal, chunk of metal kind. If you look really closely right here, those are her initials. So she writes her initials, like signing the painting, on the iron. See how it's on this like lacy kind of fabric? And then if you look upwards, you've got all of this lacy fabric here. And then look at this other side, and you see how the fabric here is much straighter. It's got these boxier lines. Those circles, that's a collar, and these are sleeves. I don't know if you've ever seen men's dress shirts folded up how they're supposed to be folded, like in a store. I know everyone in San Diego is so casual. Not too many of us wear a dress shirt very often, but these are like fancy men's dress shirts folded and pressed, and the collar kind of pokes up like that. So you have this interesting thing here where you've got the kind of women's section here, all of her laundry probably, and then on the left you've got the men's section, that's probably her husband's laundry. So you have something that probably really happened, 2 stacks of laundry, but you've also got, you know, if you want to interpret it this way, which I do, you've got this kind of interesting meditation on gender differences. You've got these boxy male kind of garments and then these lacy, frilly female garments, which includes the symbol of work, the iron. These words are interesting too. Those are the words for work. This is a shortened version of the Russian word for work, and then this word, which I can't pronounce correctly, but that means laundry. So she's referring to work. She's obviously referring to laundry. So we've got the subject matter now, but then just look at the form of it. It's not so different from the kind of analytic cubism we've been looking at. Remember this one by Pablo Picasso? Oh, actually, I'm not sure if I showed you this one, but anyway, here is one by Pablo Picasso. This is called Man with a Violin. You can see a little bit of the violin here. You can see his face broken up into all these different shattered bits. It has this feeling like you're looking at a scene through a kaleidoscope. And as you turn the kaleidoscope and all of the little shards of your vision displace, you get that impression with that shattered look of cubism. So you can see that's fairly similar here. She chooses to use these blue colors, this interesting blue, and then these bright whites. There was a bluing agent that people used to use in their laundry. It was basically a blue liquid that you put in there and it made your whites whiter. I guess it was sort of like a bleach, but this is the same color blue. So she probably chose it to refer back to that specific kind of work. The thing that makes this different than cubism, really her own kind of version, well, it's two things really. I mean, first of all, you've got this interest in the subject matter being something where it's part of the painting. I mean, obviously the subject matter is part of the painting here too, but with a lot of the cubists early on, particularly Braque and Picasso, the subject was kind of just an excuse for the formal innovations. So you've got a man with a violin, but it's not really about him. It's about all of these little shards and the things that he's doing in terms of breaking up space. Whereas she's got, the same kind of technique, but she's choosing an unusual subject that speaks specifically to gender roles during this period. So she's bringing in some sort of social commentary in a way that you don't see all that often in these, at least earlier kind of cubist pieces. So that's a little bit on Linen by Natalia Goncharova. There's more for you to read about her in the written lecture online. But remember, she's one of these several artists that we're looking at who take the cubist innovations and then bring them, into the future decades and change them a little bit and make them more their own. Okay, thanks. I will see you next week.